Hi everyone, and welcome to sixth and last session of manual testing project. As usual, if you have any question, then please ask in Q&A section and I will try my best to answer all the questions. Recording of the session will be accessible and I will upload it on YouTube channel. So there is a separate playlist for manual testing project. So you can find all these videos in that playlist. I have also given the link of the Facebook group in case if you are not already part of the group. And also I have mentioned the name of YouTube channel as well. Okay, so if we just have a look at the course outline. So far we have covered 5 modules, and the last one which we will be covering today is regarding test reporting and closure. So today's agenda is we will see that who is a stakeholder, sprint review, what is sprint retrospective, test reporting, what kind of reports are generated, and also the project test report for the project which we have done in this training. Okay, so this is an overview of the Scrum structure, and we have gone through this a couple of times. And there are a few things which we have already done in the sprint. And now as we have reached towards the end of the sprint, so this is the part which we'll be focusing in today. So it will be sprint review and sprint retrospective, because by this point, the sprint, the 2-week sprint has ended. And now we have to do the review and retrospective and see that how well or how bad we have done, where we are. Okay, before we proceed to sprint review, first of all, let's understand that who is a stakeholder, because this is the term which we will be using a lot. So let's see that who is a stakeholder. Anyone who is not part of the Scrum team, but has specific interest or an influence in the product. So remember when we spoke about the Agile team, the Scrum, then we said that there are 3 different set of people. So we have our Scrum team, who is comprised of all the people who are working as a dev team, like developers, tester, BA, UX designer, etc. Then we have a product owner, and we also have a Scrum master as well. So stakeholder is someone who is not directly part of the Scrum team, and it can be mostly represented by a product owner. But apart from the product owner, if we see the wider management in the organization, or maybe we can say the senior management, then they can be part of the stakeholders. Okay, who else can be? Let's see, key decision makers. Okay, so as I said that these can be the senior management in the organization, anyone who is making the decision that whether we are going ahead with this product launch, etc., or not. They can be users as well, the end users. In the case, like, for example, if we are building a product in-house, like for in-house use, a product which we are developing in-house, but it will be used by the users of that organization as well. So in that case, stakeholder can be users, any like selected users can be stakeholders as well. Stakeholders can also be a third party. So in case we are developing a product for another organization who is the third party, and we have to deliver it to them, then of course at that in that case, the stakeholders will be any representative from that third party. Or project sponsors. So if we are working on a specific project and any other external company is sponsoring the project, so they have invested in that project, then of course they have their interest in the product, so they can be the stakeholders as well. Okay, so this is to show you that how the Scrum team and the business team, they are aligned. So Scrum team, they have been working on the sprint. They have been developing the features, testing the features, and completed the sprint or the release. And then on the other side, we have business, who can be anyone from the stakeholders, as we discussed. So those are business people, and they have their interest in what we have developed. But as you could have seen that so far, we didn't had any stakeholder part of the Scrum team or any of the meetings we have done so far. And that is because we had the product owner. So product owner is a person who basically acts like a bridge between business and Scrum team, because product owner would be one who will be representing both ends, Scrum team to business and business to Scrum team, to make sure that Scrum team is developing what business wants and vice versa. Okay, let's have a look at sprint review. So sprint review is a meeting where development team demonstrates the product completed during the sprint to the product owner. Okay, so now over here, because product owner has been part of the entire sprint and actively been engaged in whatever was done in the sprint. So of course, product owner would be aware of what has been done, but this is more of a like a formal review to actually demonstrate it to the product owner, and there can be stakeholders as well in this meeting. So sprint review is something where it can be either to only product owner, or product owner may also invite other stakeholders as well, who can see that what has been developed, and then based on that make any proposed changes or take any decision. Okay, so who are the attendees of the sprint review? Scrum team or development team, whatever you call them, it's the same thing. Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is someone who is facilitating and planning all these meetings, starting from sprint planning, and then daily stand-ups, sprint review, retrospective, etc. Then of course we have product owner, or we may have stakeholders as well. So either we have product owner and stakeholders, both of them, or if we have only product owner, then product owner is basically representing stakeholders too. Okay, so what's part of sprint review? What's being done as part of this meeting? So it's discussed that in that sprint, what was done, which features were developed, or if there were any changes to the existing features, then what was basically done as part of that sprint. Then a demo is given. So if there is any feature which was developed, which is demonstrable, then we give the demo. So the team gives the demo to the product owner and stakeholders, so that they can have a look at how the functionality will actually look. And then the release plan is also discussed. So for example, depending on like how the sprint has been finished, completed, if it aligns with the release plan, then the release get a go ahead that yes, we can go ahead with the release. And in case if there were any important stories which were not completed as part of that sprint, then the release plan may be changed or adjusted accordingly, that okay, we are not yet ready, or this is not what we are looking for. Maybe we need some changes, some improvements before we go ahead with the release. So these kind of things are also discussed in the sprint review. And also proposed changes. So as the product owner, and stakeholders, they go through the demo, they can propose any changes if needed, and they can also change the priorities of the coming features as well. So maybe in the backlog, there are few features which already has a set priority, but based on the sprint review, they might change it. They might propose some changes in the existing sprint and maybe add new user stories in the backlog, which might not be needed as part of this sprint release, but may be necessary for the other ones. So those kind of changes can be proposed in the sprint review as well. Okay, so now another question, that when we have the sprint reviews, a sprint review can be on the last day of the sprint, which is if we are doing 2-week sprint, which we are doing for this project. So if we have a 2-week sprint, then day 10, we can have a sprint review and sprint retrospective as well. So sprint review and retrospective, these two events can be merged together as well. So starting with sprint review and then retrospective. So just keep in mind then that in retrospective, stakeholders are not required. They don't need to be in the retrospective, because that's more within the team, that how the team did, and we'll go through it in a while. But sprint review, either it can be merged with retrospective, or it can be done on the same day, day 10, but maybe like in the morning, review can be done, and in the afternoon, retrospective can be done. So it can be done in these two ways. Okay, so just have a look at the product roadmap, which we went through earlier as well. So this product roadmap is for the product owner, because remember when we started our sprint planning, at that time, the product owner, they had a rough idea, a rough roadmap of how they want all the releases to be done, how they want all the basic features to be implemented and released. So now, as we progress through all the sprints, this is what a product owner is also having a look at, that what has been done in sprint 1, is it aligning to the product roadmap or not? So sprint 1 is done. So this will give an idea to the product owner and to the team as well, that what was decided, are we still on track? So let's say that sprint 1, it was planned that in sprint 1, we will finish valet parking functionality, and then there will be a release. So if we see the entire backlog and the sprint, that we had 4 user stories and all 4 user stories were completed, this means that we have achieved the goal. We have achieved the sprint goal. So do you remember that we mentioned a sprint goal when we started the sprint? So this means that we have achieved the goal successfully for this sprint. We are on track. And as we have finished sprint 1, so we are okay to go for the release. And this also means that there is a possibility that we can continue the work for the rest of the sprints as per the plan as well. Okay, so after sprint review, let's go ahead and have a look at sprint retrospective. So in sprint retrospective, we discussed 3 things: what went well, what was not well, and ideas to improve. Okay, so as I said that in this meeting, stakeholders are not part of this meeting, because this is something which needs to be discussed within the team, that how the team was happy with what they did, what was not well, what they were not happy about, and the idea is for continuous improvement. So if there are any suggestions, so those are noted down as well. So now, how the retrospective is done. So the key idea of retrospective is that getting details from all team members, the Scrum team members, but whatever the suggestions, good or bad, are being given, these are kept anonymous. So there are two ways. One way is that the Scrum, because Scrum Master is basically hosting this meeting as well. So the Scrum Master can give 3 post-it notes to each member of the team, and one can be for what went well, one what not went well, and one for ideas to improve. Everyone, they will write their thoughts on the post-it notes, and then on any wall or the board, um, Scrum Master will just make 3 columns, draw 3 columns of what went well, not well, ideas to improve, and will stick all the post-it notes in the respective columns. So now everyone's thoughts are there, but no one's name is there. So no one knows that that who has actually suggested what. So this is the idea of retrospective, because this is so that there is no pressure on anyone, and everyone can be honest and they can give their unbiased opinion about the sprint. Because if the opinion is biased, then of course then there are less chances that we can make any improvement in the coming sprints. So this is one way it's done. And the other way it can be done is that there are lots of online retrospective boards available as well. So one of them is this. I will, at the end, I will also show you this board so that you can have a look. So many teams, instead of doing it on post-it notes, they already have this link shared with the team. And before coming to the retrospective meeting, everyone in the team, they add their suggestions, they add all their opinions in the board. So this is another way to do as well. And if this board is not available, then of course you can also use like a shared spreadsheet as well. So there are many ways to do it, but the idea is that it is kept, that everyone can give their opinions without showing up their names, that okay, who has given any opinion. Okay, so now let's come to our project. So the project which we have done. So in the last session, we did the test execution, and we also learned how to report the defects. I also showed you an overview of the reporting structure as well. So now is the time that we are at the end of the sprint. We are happy with the sprint, and it's the last day. So we have to complete the sprint and then begin a new cycle, a new sprint on Monday. Okay, so this is a screenshot of our product backlog. And over here, you can see that we had 4 stories, 4 user stories. And over here, you can see that all of them are marked as done. This means that we have completed all the user stories and we are happy to complete the sprint. And over here, as you can see this highlighted button, if we click this, then the sprint will be marked as completed. Okay, so why I'm showing you this, because I've already marked as completed, because I wanted to show you a couple of things after it was completed. Okay, so this is what, and so that's why I just took the screenshot at that time. So this is what we do when the sprint is completed. So in this scenario, we have all of these user stories are marked as done. So we have completed all of them successfully. These will be removed from the backlog, and I will show you how the backlog now looks. So I will show you in a while as well when we will go to JIRA instance. Okay, so there can be another scenario that let's say that we had 4 user stories, but 3 were completed and 1 was incomplete. So I also wanted to cover that scenario and show you that how that looks. So if we have an incomplete sprint, so in that case, if you click complete sprint button, which I just showed you, then you will be shown this kind of screen, which says this sprint contains 3 completed issues and 1 open issue, which means that at the beginning of the sprint, we planned for 4 user stories, 3 are completed, good, but 1 is not completed. It's still showing as open. And as we have to mark this sprint as complete, what do we want to do with that one open issue? Because we just can't leave it as it is. We have to think about it, that something which was not completed for any reason, maybe the other sprint items, they took longer, or maybe this one was deprioritized. Whatever the reason is, we now need to think about that, how to handle this one open issue. So there are 2 options, as you can see over here as well. It says move open issues to new sprint. So one option is that the incomplete issues can be moved to new sprint. So we have done sprint 1, and when we will start the new sprint, we can move this incomplete ticket, incomplete user story, to that new sprint. Or the other option is that we move it to the product backlog. So this depends on the priority of this user story. So if this user story is really, really important, then this will carry over to the new sprint. And let's say if we say that, okay, we think that this is not of a high priority and the product owner doesn't want it to be part of the new sprint, then we can move it back to the product backlog. This will go back to the product backlog, and then product owner can prioritize that user story as compared to the other ones as well. And then this may be taken up in any other future sprint. So these are the 2 things which I wanted to show, that what happens if a sprint is not complete. Okay, so next now let's come to the test reporting. So we have done the sprint review, we have done the retrospective as well. And now let's see that why we need test report in our project. Okay, so aim of a test report is to provide details and activities about tests which have been performed as part of the sprint or the release. And it helps team members, and it also helps the stakeholders to take the decision if the release should go live or not. And for example, if there are many open defects, then definitely stakeholder can delay the release. So these are the decisions which are taken by having a look at the test report, and there can be many different kind of test reports as well. So what kind of reports? So there can be a test summary report, there can be a test completion report. So we did touch this test reporting part in the ISTQB Foundation syllabus training as well. So if you can see that training in the last module, or maybe second last module, we did cover the test reporting as well. So what kind of reports? Okay, so first of all, we need to see that for our project, what kind of reports do we need? So if we are doing a waterfall, then of course there will be more formal reports. But as we are doing agile project, then we might not need those many reports, because over here we are already using a project management tool and defect tracking tool, which is JIRA. We are already using Zephyr, which is basically test management tool, which means that everyone in the team, they have an insight of what's going on in a sprint. They are up to date with what has been done, what has not been done, what's the execution status of a user story, how many are passed, how many are failed. So they already have all these details in JIRA. So maybe as compared to a waterfall model, we don't need as many formal reports for an agile project. But as I said, that the stakeholders, they are not part of the team, so they might not have access to JIRA, or they might are not actively looking at how all these statistics are being shown, captured. They just want maybe a list, a formal report at the end to see that whether we are good to go to live or not. So for them, we can definitely come up with a test report, and we can also make use of the test reporting feature in JIRA and Zephyr. Okay, so who are the recipients? So as I said, that the recipients can be the team members as well, because the entire team needs to know that where we are, but because the entire team is actively part of the sprint, so most probably they are already aware of where we are, because everyone is working as a team to deliver that product, to deliver those features in the sprint. So they don't need any formal report. And then comes the product owner. Product owner is also part of the sprint as well. But at the end, we can have a report which can be given to the product owner and the stakeholders. Okay, how often? Daily, weekly, sprint, release. Okay, so then, yeah, this is also something which we need to decide earlier, that how often we need a report. In Agile, definitely we don't need a daily report or a weekly one, maybe one for a sprint, or maybe one for a release, like maybe a release is done for multiple sprints. So maybe we can have one report for the release rather than a sprint. Okay, it also depends like what kind of product you are developing and for whom you are developing. Like for example, if you are doing it on a third party, then definitely if we are doing a release every sprint or every couple of sprints, then we need to have a test report to send it over to the third party, because they are external people. They don't know what's going on. So it all depends that who are your stakeholders. You need to provide a test report to them at the end. Okay, so I just want to recall one of the Agile principles. So in the first session, we went through Agile principles, and one of the Agile principle, number 6 principle, was that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. So this is why we don't do a lot of documentation in Agile, because the team is preferred that the team is talking to each other. And this is why we have a team, a set of people who are working together. This is why we have daily stand-ups, that people speak to each other, they discuss and they update each other about what has been done and what's not going well every day as part of the sprint. So that's why, based on this principle, Agile principle, we don't do many formal reports, and we rely more on face-to-face conversations. But as the stakeholders are not part of the team, so at the end, we do need to provide some kind of test report to them. Okay, test results. So when we talk about the test report, a major part of a test report are the test results as well. So let's see that what's included in test results. So this will include test execution results. So as we executed a few tests last week, so how many tests are passed, how many are failed, those kind of things, everything would be part of the test execution results. Then total number of bugs. So while execution, how many bugs we found out. Then status of bugs, that from the bugs which we found and we reported, how many were fixed, retested and closed, how many are still open and those are not resolved, and how many were fixed but on retesting they were reopened because they were not actually fixed. So, and how many of them maybe are blocked for any reason because of some other bug. So all these statuses are really crucial as well. And then severity and priority of the bugs as well, because let's say if we have a huge number of bugs, then we need to see that what's the severity and priority of the bugs, and then get those bugs fixed in that order. So if a bug which is critical or a blocker, that needs to be resolved first. And if there is a bug which the severity is high but the priority is very low, then maybe we can shift it a little bit down in the list, as compared to some a bug which is critical and the priority is very high as well. So this helps us to to sort out the bugs in the order it should be fixed, in the order it needs to be worked on. Okay, so now we had an overview of what the test results are comprised of. So now if we come to a test report, a final test report, which we are sharing with anyone, it can be a third party, it can be internal stakeholders, or it can be just for a record of our own sprint as well going forward. So it's good to have a report so that going forward, we have a record of all the sprint reports or the release reports, etc. Okay, so the test report may include a test objective, that what we are trying to achieve from that report for the testing which we have done. Now it depends that whether this report was for a sprint, whether it was for a release, or whether it was for the entire project. Test results, which we already discussed, that what will be part of that, that what are the statistics, what metrics we have got. And then which environment were these tests conducted on? So was it on test environment? Was it on partially on dev and partially on test? Or if we have any UAT or a pre-production environment, then whether the tests were done over there as well, what kind of testing was done. Then some other metrics apart from the test results. So we have test results, and then from test results we can derive some more test metrics which are more of interest to the stakeholders. For example, test executed versus remaining, that the tests which were planned for that sprint, were all of those executed or not, or there were few which were not executed, and how many were passed and how many were failed, because that gives an idea of the quality of the build which was given, the quality of code which was given to the testers. Stories completed in a sprint or a release, that how many stories were planned for a sprint or a release, and whether all of them were completed or if there are still some incompleted ones. Build acceptance percentage. So we covered this part in our last session, that when a build is deployed to a test environment for testing, then we do carry out smoke testing just to have a look that the build is okay, if everything is deployed perfectly fine, and can we go ahead with with our detailed testing. So what was the build acceptance percentage? That it might be that the build was given to us 2-3 times, and then upon smoke testing we found out that okay, it's not working, and we had to reject it, and it was it went back to developers, and this definitely will impact the time frame as well for testing. So that's why what was the build acceptance percentage is also one of the key metrics. Okay, so now all these metrics, which all these details which we are talking about in test report, there can be many other things as well which we can include in a test report. So this is not everything. Okay, going forward, risks. So what were the risks involved, or how many risks were mitigated? If there are still any risks which we want to point out in the test report, then yes, we should definitely include it in the test report, because that would be really helpful to the decision makers to decide that whether it's okay to go ahead with a production launch or not. And at the end, the last one is either exit criteria, or in the Agile projects, what we call as definition of done. That whatever the criteria was for this sprint or release, are we meeting that criteria or not? And this is something which we have already discussed, and there can be many things which can be part of this criteria. So whether that was done or not. So ideally in the Agile project, whatever was discussed in the project, that needs to be part of definition of done. Okay, so all right, okay. So next is forms of reports. So now we have discussed that what kind of reports can be and what can be part of the reports. And now we come to this section that what are the forms of reports. So reports can be done in a traditional style, which can be in an Excel spreadsheet, or we can generate a report using a test management tool. Like we are using Zephyr combined with JIRA. So we can generate test reports from there as well. Or if we are using an automation framework, then we can include reporting as part of the framework as well. So there are different ways that how the reports can be generated. Okay, so now this is these are few screenshots which I have taken from our project. This is what I gave you an overview of in the last session as well. I did show you that all these structure of the reporting, but let's have a look at this once again. So we do have like a test summary report where it shows that how many tests were there, how many were executed, how many were executed and how many were not executed. Then we also have a view of the test cycles execution as well. So do you remember that we added our test to different test cycles? And then we can also have an idea of like how many tests were done in the first cycle and how many were done in the second cycle. Who actually uh, conducted all the testing. So there can be multiple testers. In this case, it was done from my user account. So that's why it's just showing that one. Otherwise, they can be multiple. If there are multiple testers in the team, then it can be multiple people as well. Okay, then we also have test metrics. So this view shows us that how many tests were actually executed, when they were executed, and how many were passed and how many were failed. So we get all that detailed metrics from this view as well. So as you can see, the date is given. The green ones are the ones which were passed and red ones are the one which were failed. So these are few metrics which we can get from Zephyr and JIRA. Then this one, the search test execution, if we go on this link, then it shows us that how many tests were executed, what were the results, etc. And there are lots of filters over here. Like for example, I included only the project which we tested and a specific version, both test cycles, etc. So we can choose anything from this filter. And then what we can do, if you can see this export button over here, we can export this report to an either in HTML form or in CSV form. And for that, this is useful for the test report which we will give to a third party or any other stakeholder, because for the team JIRA is sufficient. We can get all these details, all the cycle summary, test, search test execution, test summary report within that tool. We can always go there and we can filter out and we can get all the details what we require for that project. But everyone who is external to the team, for them, we do need to send them a formal report, and that's what we can done by using this export feature. So the execution which we did last week, for that I did exported a report just to show you that how it will look. So I exported in CSV format, and this is how it's looked. So it's the same thing, but it's in a tabular form, and it shows like an execution ID, which is auto-generated. Then what were these cycles? If you can see cycle 1 and 2, both of them. Then what were the issue keys? So these were the issues against which the execution was done. Then what was the test summary? So this is the title. Then what was the project? what was the version, then the priority of those issues, who executed it, when it was executed, and what was the status of execution, like how many were passed and failed, and the ones which were failed, against that, what were the defect IDs which were raised. So, and then of course when it was created. So all these details are there. So this is quite handy because instead of uh, generating a manual test report, you can have all this data in Zephyr, in JIRA, and all you have to do is you have to export it whenever you require. And these are the things which I included in the report. There are many other, this is customizable, so you can add any more details in the test report as well. Okay, so this was all from an overview. So now there are a few other things which I want to show you by actually going to the JIRA instance. So if you have any question, please let me know from these slides. Otherwise, I will take you to JIRA. Okay, so this is our JIRA instance. I hope you all can see this. Okay, so now you can see our product backlog. So earlier we had our sprint items over here. It was shown sprint number 1 over here, and we had the details of the sprint items and their statuses. So now you can see that we can't see it anymore because we marked that sprint as completed, and now we have a blank canvas for our sprint 2. So over here, as you can see that we haven't started our sprint 2 yet because of course we are still on the last day of our sprint 1. We have completed our sprint 1, but we haven't started our sprint 2 as well. Okay, so now this sprint can be marked as completed either on day 10 or when we are going through sprint 2 sprint planning meeting. At that time also you can mark that one completed and then start a new one. So it depends, it can be done on either of the dates. Okay, so now over here sprint 1 has been completed. Sprint 2, you can see there is nothing, but we do have some backlog items. So again, a new cycle will start on the coming Monday, and new things from the backlog will be moved in the next sprint as part of the sprint planning meeting, and then we can start sprint, and that's how the cycle will keep on going for each sprint. So this is a view which I wanted to show you. And as we have completed the first sprint, if you will go on the board as well, you will see that there is nothing over here because we have marked that sprint completed. So it has also cleared up the board, the sprint board as well. So once we'll start a new sprint, then you will see all the sprint items, all the user stories and tasks or the bugs over here in the to do to start with. So this is how each sprint works. Okay, and then I also mentioned an online board for retrospective. So this is this is how it looks like. There are 3 columns: went well, to improve, action items. You can add more columns as well if you want, but these are basically the 3 main ones. And you can also customize that what you want to call it as well. So that can be done as well. So the idea is that before the retrospective meeting, everyone, they add few things over here. So now everyone can add that, okay, the maybe build acceptance percentage was good, right? And what didn't go well maybe changes in user stories. So that can be something which didn't go well, that while we were having our sprint, within the sprint, there were lots of changes in the user stories and which can impact the time frame as well. So over here, there will be a list who will do like everything over here, like, okay, what went well and to improve, and if they want to give any action items, or this is the column which can be discussed in the retrospective, and then based on that some action items are decided that okay, based on this, what should we do now? So let's say that there was something changes in user stories, and the action item can be that ensure that user stories are well groomed prior to sprint planning meeting. Okay, so this says that, okay, in order to improve this issue, we can ensure that the user stories are groomed earlier than the sprint planning session, so that when we have something in the sprint planning meeting and we decide to include it in the sprint, then we expect no changes or maybe very minimal changes in the sprint. So this is how the retrospective meeting goes on. As you can see that there are no names over here. So everyone who will, this board will be shared with all the team members, and they can just include whatever they want to in these columns, and then there is no name given that who has included what, and what went well is good, because this is something is for the team that, okay, this is as a team what we did really, really well, and we should continue doing these good things, because that's the purpose of writing what went well, that, okay, as a team, we did these things really well, and we should continue doing it in the same way. And the improved ones is that what issues we had, so that we can improve those issues next time. And to improve those issues, what are the action items? So this is something which some of the action items can already be suggested by the team, or for each action, for each improvement to improve thing, we can decide on an action item within this retrospective meeting as well. And then going forward, these action items, until they are not done in each sprint, they will stay over here. So these will not be removed until these action items are implemented. So once we say that, okay, in the next retrospective, we say that, okay, this one was done and we didn't had this issue, we completed this action item, and this is basically, it can maybe in the next sprint went well, it can be that, oh, there were no changes in the user stories within the sprint, so that will actually act as a went well thing, so we can remove the action items from here once it's done. So this is only one online board which I wanted to show you as an example. There can be many others as well. Right, okay, so apart from that, couple of more things which I want to show you. Okay, if we come to the reporting section of JIRA, two reports which I want to show you is the velocity report. So earlier I did mention that what is a sprint velocity and how it is calculated. So sprint velocity is not a very important measure for the first sprint, because we are still starting. We don't know that how the team is, how well the team will do, how soon the how the estimates are given. But now, as we have ended our sprint, so we can go here and we can have a look at the sprint velocity. So what it is showing is that the gray one is the commitment, that this is what we planned when, remember, we gave our sprint estimations for each user story, we estimated few user points. So the gray one is showing that these were the estimated story points, and the green ones are the completed ones. That's how we completed it. And over here you can see that the story points which were actually estimated, and actually the story points, the time which was taken to complete those stories, are both equal. This means that the velocity of the team was fine as per um, it was as we planned earlier for the sprint, and going forward then we can keep the same momentum, we can keep the same velocity, and we can plan in the same way. So this is what it was done, that it was committed 18 and completed was 18 as well, which means that 18 is the velocity of the team. And going forward in the coming sprints, if we want to keep the same momentum, then these are the story points which we should aim for to complete in a sprint. Okay, so this is the velocity report. There's another thing which I want to show you is the sprint burn down chart. Okay, so what is sprint burn down chart is that whenever we start a sprint and we give some story estimates. So remember we had a sprint of 2 weeks. We started on 12th of July and it was supposed to end over here on 26th of July, right? So that's how it was supposed to be there, like that this straight line. That's how we are planning to complete the story starting from day 1 to day 10. Okay, and then as we keep on moving the stories from one column to the another, um, like in progress, to do, in progress, in test, done. So as soon as we move one item, one story to done, it will keep a track of this, and it will this red line, which now you can see it's a straight line over here, and I will tell you why it is like that. Instead of this, it should be around this. There should be different curves over here, and as long as this red line is closer to this line, this means that our sprint is going well. So this is something, an indication of how well our sprint is progressing, and this is something which is being checked many times throughout the sprint to see that are we on track or not. Okay, so now let's see that why it is showing a straight line over here, because this is definitely no way closer to this ideal line. And the reason is that of course this project was for testing purposes, and we actually didn't carried out a real project for 2 weeks, and that's why only at the end we marked all of them as done. And actually if you can see that this was the line where it was supposed to finish, but I marked them later than this date, so that's why it's showing that this was not this sprint didn't finish on time. It was finished after that. And if you can see all these things, that we had 4 user stories, and this is showing that when we completed all these user stories. So these are the circles when we marked all these user stories as done. And because I moved them at the same point, so that's why it's showing us the sprint burn down chart like this. Otherwise, if we would have done it in a usual way, that one user story is completed, it's marked as done, and the other one is done over here. So as close as this line is to this ideal curve, then it means that we are on track, and there are more possibilities that we can finish the sprint on time. And this also give an indication that if we are quite far from our ideal curve, then what should we do? Maybe we should speed up something, maybe we should reprioritize, maybe we should exclude few sprint items. So this is as a team to review multiple times within the sprint that, okay, how well we are doing. And this is something which Scrum Master will keep track of, and Scrum Master will keep on telling the team that, okay, the sprint burn down chart doesn't look very well, so maybe we need to have a look at it. Okay, so these are the few things which I wanted to show you. If you have any question, then please let me know. Otherwise, we are done for today's session as well. So let me know if you have any question. Okay, no question from your side. So, okay, there is one. All right, Denmark is saying, I'm good for today. Okay, thank you so much, Denmark. Right, okay, so then we can end our session over here. So I hope that you enjoyed this training, and it has given you an idea of how we test an agile project. And I hope that this will help you when you will work on any agile project yourself using JIRA or Zephyr or any other management tool as well. With this, then we have ended this series of manual testing project, and next course which we will be starting on will be API testing using Postman. So if that's something which you are interested in, then please join us for that. I will upload the videos for that as well as usual on the YouTube channel, and you will get more details in the Facebook group as well. So yes, please join us, and till then, take care.